Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 562. Available now in theaters across the US, and also coming up very soon on digital as well is Blow Up My Life, conspiracy comedy thriller that stars Jason Selvig as a disgraced pharmaceutical employee who stumbles across a conspiracy involving his former company. With its blend of black comedy and conspiracy mystery, Blow Up My Life is both a funny and thrilling example of how to create an entertaining film while also delving into serious subject matter. And joining me now are the directors and writers of Blow Up My Life, Dickie and Abigail Horton. Ryan and Abigail, thank you both very much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
So glad to be here.
So just to confirm, the digital release, we're looking at November 4, is that correct?
14th, November 14th.
November 14th. But for people out there, there are a bunch of AMC theaters that are showing it now. We'll be showing it very soon. I think the 10th of this month, we're going to have another fresh dates of stuff going out as well, and more so after that as well. So I really recommend people do check it out on the big screen, actually, because I think indie films need to be seen on the big screen. Even though there's a small screen option, we need to get more people in theaters to see indie movies, because I think especially indie films have to be seen in the big screen, so more and more are made in the future. But in regards to Blow Up My Life, Ryan, I'm really curious about the film's tone. So I was saying in my introduction, you got the comedy, you got the conspiracy thrills. When it comes to yourself and Abby, when it comes to like writing, how does that kind of tone come about? Is it predetermined? Is it organic? Is it just a part of the nature of how you are as storytellers and writers? Has it all kind of like come together?
Yeah, I think, in this case, it was something that we wanted to impart from the beginning. The subject matter of opioids and, corporate conspiracy and all that is heavy. And we wanted to kind of, create a character that was waking up to his complacency in the problem. And there's something kind of inherently sort of like befuddling about that. And I think to contrast and balance the comedy with the thrills and the intrigue, that's just like, how I really like to ride a roller coaster, I guess, when, things are getting light, and then you can kind of T-bone people with, something unexpected, or vice versa. When it's too serious, you can kind of shift the energy and take them somewhere else. So I think in this case, we really wanted to work with Jason Selvig from the very beginning, and he has like we've worked with him before, and he has an amazing awareness of tone and these tones of taking serious subject matters and flipping it on its head and making it funny too. So he really helped us achieve that tone.
So Abby, timeline wise, when you start working on this with Ryan, what's happening in the US with opioids and big pharma? Is it at this time that the Sackler family and Purdue, is that when that is really like front page news and that's what's happening in the world, or have we not even reached that point yet?
No, I mean, so we shot this in October 2020 and wrote it the summer of 2020. So of course we were going through one giant, healthcare epidemic and a failure of our healthcare systems due to capitalism. And so it was fascinating to be writing a film about that on another parallel, trajectory with the opioid epidemic. But at the time, the Sacklers were actually going through their bankruptcy trial. And judges were deciding whether they could be charged, be held personally accountable, or whether they could be kind of shrouded by their corporate cover on that. And it's bounced back and forth a few times, but that's where we were at the moment during that summer. So their role in all this was already well known, but I mean the opioid epidemic just continues to grow.
100,000 people die a year.
So it's not going anywhere, sadly. So it's been a topic that's fascinated us from a, almost, like a examination of our system gone wrong to like the highest degree, but also it's, hit us personally. And so it's a topic that we both think about and read about and have, experienced. So it was important for us to bring that into this film.
Ryan, you mentioned before how you wanted to work with Jason Selvig. He plays the role of Jason Trumbull in the movie. This is the first time I came across Jason like in any form so far, and my impressions of him after watching the movie is kind of like if you took Steve Carell and John Krasinski from The Office and blend them together. This is who you get. It's kind of like this kind of like tall, lanky, kind of good looking guy, but it's kind of like a awkwardness and naivety towards him. And I think that naiveness about his character in the film, it's what makes him endearing, but at the same time, kind of like almost like a frustrating character as well. It almost seems like that his ego is his number one priority on top of everything else. What was it like writing that character and knowing Jason's strengths in that? Do you write specific for him, or even though you wanted to cast him in it, or does when he come aboard, do you like to tweak the character kind of bits to kind of have Jason's strengths as to fit in that kind of mold of the character you're making in the movie?
Yeah, it was really fun to write this character because it's someone that you at first don't want to root for because they are kind of naive, egocentric, kind of jerks that are sort of part of the problem. And over the course of the story, he's kind of on a road to redemption of sorts, which, even the motivation for that is a little bit hazy. Intentionally, is this just to, get his old job back, his old, power and status back, or is he really doing this because he wants to do the right thing? Maybe a little bit of both. So Jason, again, just has like a great awareness of playing both sides of that, and I think is very willing to,
When you wrote it for him.
Wrote it for him, certainly, but I think he's willing to kind of humiliate himself to a degree and drop his ego as an actor enough to play someone that you don't necessarily like right away, or even for a while. But I think he understood that is part of the fabric of that character, and it needed to be like that for him to get, for the arc to be satisfying, and for it to really, him to change and get somewhere else. And so we did improv a lot. I wouldn't say improv, but I guess I would say Jason brought a lot on set when we were really kind of like refining the dialogue, and finding that pitch perfect kind of balance there.
I think when it comes to the comedy of his character and how naive he is in the position that he's in, there's a line in the film that just cracked me up where he says, "I couldn't believe this big pharmaceutical company was in it for the money."
That's a Jason Selvig original right there. He made that one up. It's so funny. He's great.
Yeah.
When it comes to Abigail, to Jason's character of Jason, when we first see him, he's like full on hard boiled, neo noir kind of like form. He's doing his little narration in his little recorder, doing his life story, but like as a treating it as kind of like he was like in a pulp novel. But even though the funny thing about his character, even though he kind of sees himself as this kind of like hard-boiled kind of Jake Giddies kind of guy, he's actually more of a soft-boiled detective, isn't he? Not as tripped out as the dude from Big Lebowski, and not as pop culture driven as Andrew Garfield's character in Under the Silver Lake, but somewhere in between there. I just really like to talk about trying to find the approach of not only putting those noir elements into his character, but what type of kind of a noirish person did you want him to be? Did you foresee him as kind of like someone who was kind of like thinking that he was undergoing his own noir adventure in his own head, and he was kind of like seeing this stuff, even though it was a very high stakes game that he was part of, that it was almost kind of like a fantasy play for him in this sort of way?
Yeah, that was definitely a real tightrope that we walked trying to find that. A big inspiration was Double Indemnity. That noir, it's so funny. It really is, and you kind of forget that when we were going back and watching and just dying. Yeah, so I mean, I think Jason's motivation for going on this journey is a bit, in some ways he wants to do the right thing. He understands what he's done and been a part of and wants to fix it. In some other ways, he really doesn't have a choice. And then in the other third of that is like he kind of wants to like he wants to bring glory back to his name. He was this hot shot that was well loved by everyone, and he wants to kind of like restate his his legacy. So I think in that way, 3/4 of the movie is his perspective of him telling the story. And for sure, he's a bit of an unreliable narrator in that regard. We're making it dramatic. And I think the story function of a flashback in a noir film also has the result of making kind of everything we're seeing covered with this sense of doom, a sense of this is not going to go well. This is all going to get more and more serious and worse as we go, because we know how it ends already. And so we definitely wanted to play with that as well and use that flashback structure to kind of like heighten the stakes of, even the comedy, that even though this is funny, this doesn't go in a good direction. So that was some of our noir musings on that, but it's such a fun genre to play within too. I think you're allowed to push it a little bit within that genre.
And sometimes, like with the double indemnity, it's like the more serious he gets, the funnier it gets. And we were really intrigued by that balance, and we felt like Jason could play that very well. And the voiceover is his embellishment. That's kind of the first bits of the comedy that aren't like jokes necessarily in bits, and we really tried to write not too many jokes, but things that kind of organically came out like that.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Fandango. Get the latest showtimes, guaranteed tickets, browse Rotten Tomatoes scores, and watch trailers with Fandango, the #1 movie ticketing app. The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Gift Card Store. Australia's leading provider of gift cards, Gift Card Store offers a variety of prepaid MasterCard and Visa cards in physical or e-card format. You can even design your own card as the ultimate personalized gift. With Gift Card Store, you can gift the gift you know they will love. Please support Matt's Movie Reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. Ryan, I loved Charlie, the character that Cara Young plays in the movie. In many ways, she's kind of like the hard-boiled detective that Jason's character wishes he was. I mean, she's the one that's kicking butt and she knows everything that's happening in the world, and she has the capabilities to really stay ahead of the game, as opposed to Jason's character is always kind of like bumbling in the wind. What was it like having her in the movie? And I'm just curious, the interplay between both Jason and Cara in the film, a lot of it is happening off the screen. How do you guys play that? Do you actually have them talking on the phone to each other? Is it just a thing of post-production? How do you have that interplay happening? Because the chemistry between them is really strong.
Yeah, it was wonderful working with Cara on this. She just brought the energy right away from the audition, and we knew it was a great fit, and then she would gel really well with Jason. And she in some ways is kind of taking the perspective of the audience a little bit, and kind of sees Jason a little bit more for what he is, and is like able to call it out, and kind of like keeps helping him sort of wake up throughout. So it's a character that I think the audience can relate to a lot, and it's really super satisfying when she and Jason finally meet up in person, a little bit later in the film, because she's kind of been stuck behind the desk for the first part of it. And that's really also attributed to Jason's sort of limited perspective. Earlier on, when he's kind of talking, he only sort of sees her in that place, but then when they're together, they have, their interactions like grow, and it keeps getting bigger. So that was a really intricate part of all of her many of her scenes where she's behind the desk and they're speaking through Zoom. And like I mentioned, we shot during the pandemic, so there was a lot of quarantine issues and challenges that we had to make fit, and only so much time actors could spend, in certain scenes. We could only have so many people in certain scenes at certain times. So it's a big kind of like puzzle that we had to put together. And in that case, she and Jason were actually in the same room for the most part, having that dialogue. And then we would, re-record it again later on with Jason in a different location, him doing it on his phone or whatever. Really fun scene when it's Jason and Kara and Blake on his webcam or whatever too, the three of them together coordinating all that was really fun.
All at different times.
All at different times.
Abigail, I want to talk about the score in the movie. The synth score kind of reminds me of like early John Carpenter, the stuff that Harold Faltermeyer did with the Beverly Hills Cop movie, especially came to mind. So I'm trying to look up who did the score. The only thing I could find is P. Rose on like IMDb. Who is P. Rose, and how did the score kind of come about for this movie?
P. Rose is Paul Rose, and Paul Rose is Scuba, who is an electronic artist based in the UK. And your reference tracks were spot on. Those were also our reference tracks that we were editing to in the film. And Ryan actually has been such a huge fan of Scuba for so long. And we were also editing to his songs, just being like, God, this one track, what was it called? Do you remember?
Drift.
Drift.
Great
that
track named Drift.
Oh, it was perfect. It just is absolutely brilliant. And we're just like, I just want this track by this artist. And we're like, well, maybe Scuba would be down. And we kind of did a bit of a cold call out to Scuba, and he was, he had been wanting to do a movie, and it was a great fit between the three of us, and he is so talented, and his like ability to read the tone and bring even more to the table was just fantastic. And I think it also plays a huge part in balancing the tone of the comedy and the drama in the film. It helps to kind of like wrap it all up in the same package together. So I don't think this movie would work out, without, a film will never work without all of its parts, but I think here, particularly the music really brings it home.
Yeah.
Any chance of limited soundtrack release or Spotify playlist or anything like that? Because I'm like I said, I love the score. I'd love to be able to listen to it like on an isolated kind of way.
Yeah, yes. We're working on putting it out. I think it'll probably come out a little bit after our VOD release, but yeah, we're definitely gonna get it out there because there's a lot of good Scuba fans out there too who want to hear it. So
yeah,
that's awesome. That's great to hear. Ryan, when it comes to editing of the film, there's a snap to a lot of the cuts, especially at the start of the film. How do you approach editing for this movie? Are there different? You got the tone of the film that you have in the script, you got the performances, but the editing, I thought was something that really kind of drove home a lot of the kind of like the stakes of the movie, and especially in regards to the kind of like the forward motion that Jason's character was going through. How do you approach editing for this movie?
Thanks. It was really fun. I think there's a lot to play with in the flashback structure. Helps kind of set up a lot, and it makes a propellant sort of opening that you have to like really follow up the momentum with, even when you go back into the past. And there's a lot that the audience needs to kind of find out in the exposition kind of quickly. And we really want to get to sort of that first scene with Jason and Gary having kind of their first real character interaction. That's where the film, I think, for me, really kind of takes off, when it actually slows down a little bit. And that was fun, finding that pace, getting to that, and then, escalating it from there. And again, the music was a big part of it. And we started working with Paul kind of right from the beginning, essentially, after we had the first edit, and we were kind of sharing stuff, and he sent over tracks kind of in little bundles, so we get a few at a time, and then we'd adjust our edit a little bit. We could be like, oh, I mean, this needs a little bit more there, a little less here, etc. And then he'd send some stuff back, and we'd respond. So finding that rhythm was a collaborative effort with Paul, and I think that's what makes all of it kind of like really weave together.
Final question for both of you. I'm not going through any spoiler territory here whatsoever, but there is potential, I think, for the story to continue on. And I know that initial drafts for this movie was something kind of like more global, I guess you could say, kind of like bigger. And because of COVID, we kind of had to be more restricted. But now we're kind of outside that. I think there's potential here to maybe do more in different places, maybe add more characters and such. Is there any ideas whatsoever? And of course, it comes down to, you know, the success of the film financial, but does any ideas whatsoever to continue on this story? Because I think there's a potential for more chapters to this story, because I don't think it's over quite yet.
Ooh,
That's
thank
really
you.
nice to hear, definitely. You know, nothing planned at the moment, but certainly it is a really fun world to live in. The characters, I do think, you know, hopefully stay with everyone after the credits roll, and you know, you think about where they might be and what they might be doing, and you know, we would be happy to open it up again if the opportunity arose, for sure. That's nice to hear that you would like that too.
Yeah.
Well, I think the possibility is definitely there. But for now, for everyone out there listening, Blow Up My Life, it's playing in select cinemas around the US. It started back in September. We still got more dates coming up as well. So you got AMC Nashville, AMC Atlanta, up to the 12th. Houston, Chattanooga, Charlotte, other cinemas as well, up to around, I'd say probably around like the 19th or the 20th. There's going to be a lot of theatricals around. I really recommend people check out your theaters and see if you can watch it, because even though there is a digital on November 14 and video on demand, I really recommend people do check this out in the cinema, because like I said, we need to get, you know, post strikes, I think we need to get more people in the cinema, especially for independent films, because you know, we need more power to filmmakers and indie filmmakers. I think, in my belief is that that's where the future of like great creative kind of like filmmaking is found, and that's where we've definitely, what I definitely watched in Blow Up My Life, and Abigail and Ryan, I thank you both very much for your time today. Congratulations to you both for this film. I really enjoyed it very much. I think you got those light and dark elements in there really really great in that fun, entertaining kind of package, and I really enjoyed the film, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, Matt.
Thanks for having
I
us.
really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.